Welcome in, everyone. It's a special edition of the Minnesota Football Party. New mailbag shows with myself and Luke Inman every Wednesday going forward. We've got Vikings cornerbacks. We've got injuries on the offensive line. Draft questions for Luke Inman. That's all coming up on the brand new Minnesota Football Party.
Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcast. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Football Party. It's your guys hanging out talking next level Vikings football. So join in with Pro Football Network's Arif Hassan, Locked On Vikings Luke Braun, Superior Sports Talk's Luke Inman, and Vikings insider Sam Ekstrom, plus the biggest names in Minnesota football for the Minnesota Football Party. And it starts now.
Welcome in Minnesota Football Party on a snowy Wednesday. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota, at Sam Ekstrom on Twitter, with my man Luke Inman at Luke_Spinman on Twitter, joining me today to answer your Minnesota Vikings questions. Luke, I have one question for you just to kick it off. Very Minnesotan of me. How are you dealing with the snow? Are you hanging in there? Can you open your front door? How's your dog doing? How's everything going snow-related in your life?
We released our household injury report. I am questionable, leaning towards doubtful. I got a calf, I got a hip, I got a shoulder going on. When you go back-to-back nights and shovel like I have, I feel like I'm a caveman. We were talking before the show. I got to invest in that snowblower like you got going, because this is brutal. Back-to-back nights. Everything that I did yesterday and last night, it's not only back and then some, Sam. So it's been brutal, but I will say the positive, looking out my window, pretty magical scene out there right now. Just visually looks pretty cool. Clearly, we're in the heart of a Minnesota winter as we speak.
Yeah, we had the issue where I did the whole snow blow of the driveway. Mm-hmm. We leave to take the kids to daycare. We navigate the treacherous roads. We come back to the driveway. And since we left 15 minutes before, we've been blocked out by the snowplow, which put a massive bank of snow in our driveway. Couldn't get in, so had to jump out, plow that or blow that with a snowblower, then get in. This is the most Minnesotan conversation ever. We'll get into some football now, I promise you. Locked On Sports Minnesota, subscribe on YouTube, leave a comment, like this video, helps other people discover the show, and make sure to find us on the Amazon Fire and Roku apps, or free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Let's see what the people want to hear, Luke. We got a question about seeding. I'm going to make sure I get the handle from @FamousNorseman. Would you rather have the 2 seed, Luke, or the 3 seed? It seems obvious. You want to be the higher seed, but I think there's actually an argument to be made for both. I want to get your take on it, 2 or 3.
Yeah, of course you want the 2 seed, but let's play this out here a little bit. First of all, as we sit here and kind of go through these scenarios, you can't get to round 2 unless you win round 1. So I think the ideal scenario, when I just look at the matchups for the Vikings specifically, I'm kind of digging the Giants compared to the other 3 possible scenarios, like the Seahawks, the Lions, the Packers. I think from what we saw just a few weeks ago, especially at home, I think the Vikings match up very well with the Giants. I know we'll get into that discussion a little bit more. The Niners scare the heck out of me, Sam. They really do. And I want nothing to do with them. If I got to get them, I would love to get them at home, obviously. That's likely not going to be one of the outcomes at the end of the day. So who gives the Niners the best chance to maybe knock them out and stun a lot of people in the first round? I think we'd all agree it's got to be the Packers. How can the Packers get in? Obviously, they got to beat the Lions. If the Lions win, though, they still need help. They need the Seahawks to lose to the Rams. Not a likely scenario if we run the simulations. Maybe, I don't know what you'd say, Sam, but 7 or 8 out of 10 times the Seahawks likely beat the Rams in this final week. So they need a little help as well. But where we sit here today, Sam, I'm looking at who could maybe stun the 49ers, and I think the Packers, as well as they've played, as hot as they are, Aaron Rodgers going into any stadium, any environment during a playoff scenario, I kind of like that situation. So hopefully the Packers, and this sounds weird to say, hopefully the Packers can win, beat Detroit, and then, again, give, I guess, Vikings fans the best situation and plan to maybe stun the Niners. Because at the end of the day, Sam, again, can't go to the second round until you win round 1. I do prefer the Giants. But again, once you get past that, I just don't want anything to do with those San Francisco 49ers. What's your take on that?
Wouldn't you love to be a fly on the wall when the coaches are sitting in the privacy of their office talking this out? Because you know they're having this conversation. Publicly, they're always going to say that they're playing to win. But privately, isn't this the best argument for why you don't stress too hard to win this game on Sunday? Why you pull Justin Jefferson from playing a full allotment of snaps? You don't let Kirk Cousins play all 4 quarters? That's where I'm at. Because this is all central to the Giants being beatable. The Vikings could get a very favorable first-round matchup with the Giants if they're the 3. I think you prefer that to the Packers, don't you? You want to play Daniel Jones or Aaron Rodgers? Let me think about that for 2 seconds. I think I know the answer. And then you maximize your chance for a favorable second-round matchup. Now, when I say favorable, I don't mean necessarily that you're going to be the better team, because I think the Cowboys probably win, and the Cowboys are going to be tough. But you get it at home. Because I think there's a really good chance that Aaron Rodgers could beat Brock Purdy. I just think with what's on the line in that game for the Packers, they're probably coming in on a 6-game winning streak. Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. And Green Bay has this big history with San Francisco. They've lost so many years in the playoffs. I don't know why. Just the vibes tell me that this might be a great opportunity for Green Bay to pull an upset win. And then the Vikings do get their second-round home game against either Tampa or Dallas. I think the 3 is a great place to be. So if you're the 2, Luke, if you reverse engineer this, if you're the 2, Green Bay is not a great matchup in round 1. I don't know if you want that. And then that means San Francisco gets New York in round 1. And we think New York is beatable. We both agree on that. So then you do get the 49ers in round 2. So I think there's actually a more viable path to the NFC Championship in the 3 seed than the 2. Sounds like we both agree. And there's your answer to that question.
And I'll just say this, just as we wrap that up too, to get that second home game as the 3 seed, because that's what the 2 seed was all about, getting that second home game. And then obviously maybe a slightly easier matchup pending on who's going to win out there those last few games to secure those wild card spots. But think about if the Packers did indeed go beat the Niners, okay, then who's their next matchup? All right, well, as the 7th seed, now you got to go into Philly. Let's just say they beat Philly too. A Vikings-Packers NFC Championship game at home at the bank. How spicy would that be? But also keep in mind the fact that you're playing a Packer team that is not just red hot anymore. They're blazing. B-Dub's blazing hot now after not only getting on a run and sneaking into the playoffs, but now they just went on the road and beat the Niners and Philly on the road. They're playing with house money and they feel invincible at that point as well. But obviously we're a long way from that discussion. Just fun to think about the possible scenarios. But I'm with you. Yeah, I believe there is a nice clear path with that 3 seed as we sit here today.
We're going to make Luke Inman the happiest man in the world with a cornerbacks in the draft question after I tell you that this episode is brought to you by BetOnline, betonline.net. All the lines, all the leagues, all the games. The Vikings are getting a lot of money coming in on them. They're -6 now against the Bears. Didn't that start -1 or 2? Now it's -6. Wow. Clearly the bettors are buying into the Bears in tank mode as they go for that number 1 pick over under 46. Get all the data, all the lines, spreads, money lines, totals at betonline.net for NFL and bowl season as well. It's BetOnline. Find it on your mobile device. It's where the game starts.
Hold on, Sam. When have the Vikings, even during the 2009 Brett Favre magical run, ever gone into Soldier and had a convincing win? And I know, obviously, Bears are in tank mode. Vikings aren't playing with a lot of momentum or confidence right now either. So to see that line, I think you're right. I think it started at -1 all the way up 5 points in just 48, 72 hours. That really surprises me.
Yeah, and the Vikings have won in Chicago in recent years. I think they've won 4 out of 7, but none of them have been convincing. They've all been slogs, 20-17, 17-13, low totals. And I would expect more of the same in a game where you've got a bad offensive line. You've got banged up offensive line. Yeah. You don't want to put Justin Jefferson or Kirk Cousins at too much risk. I think you run the ball a lot. I think Alexander Mattison probably leads you in touches and carries and yards in this game. Don't try too hard. And, actually, Luke, I'm happy that there's no temptation to get Justin Jefferson the record. I think he's too far away to realistically get that. There's not going to be a temptation to overuse him. And I think that might be a blessing in disguise. Just use this as a get-right game. Maybe you win, maybe you don't. I don't think it really matters all that much. Draft question on January 4th. Why not? From Brian. How many CBs do we draft next year, and why will they disappoint us? What a glass half empty, Brian. Come on. When have they ever disappointed us? I think the answer is 2 or more. Now, I do have to ask you this, Luke. You'll know off the top of your head. How many picks do the Vikings have left? Because they've traded a number of them. Is it like 4 or 5?
So, yeah, as of today, they have a first, no second from the TJ Hawkinson. They have a third. Now, keep in mind, with their record, these are going to be late-round picks. So to have no second-rounder, you already pick late in the first, and then you're sitting there for a long time, Sam. A lot of big, good names are going to go off the board until you pick again. Currently projected the 91st pick. 4th round, you have Detroit's pick. So a little bit quicker back-to-back there in the 4th round. No 5th round. Couple 6th rounds from what I see on tankathon.com. Usually pretty accurate when it comes to keeping track of everybody's current draft picks. 2 6th-round picks later in the draft. They don't have their original 6th-round pick. They traded that to Houston, but it looks like as of now, maybe 2 compensatory picks. And then in the 7th round, it looks like they have no picks there as well. So you kind of getting in the weeds a little bit on that day 3. A lot of moving around. We already see Kwesi in his first draft was not very shy at wheeling and dealing. That 2nd-round pick, though, and you know, God bless TJ Hawkinson. I love him. Hopefully he's around for a long time. We've already seen the impact he can have in this passing game, in this offense. But having no second, especially in this draft, as we start to get into a little bit more off-season talk, free agency, the Vikings salary cap, the age of some of their core players and where they're at and how long they may or may not be around. No second-round pick, knowing how late they're going to likely drafting in these rounds here. That one's going to sting a little bit, Sam.
Yeah. So, and based on what you said, was the 4th round a pick swap? So
that's Detroit's
they have
pick.
They have 1 4th round pick. Okay. So they've got 3 picks in the first 4 rounds. Do you think they spend 1 on cornerback, 0 on cornerback, 2 on cornerback? Because to me, that is the biggest position of need. Patrick Peterson is going to want a lot of money. I think he's earned it. I don't know if I want to be the team to give it to him at his age. That means you could go in with Dantzler, Booth, Caleb Evans. Maybe you re-sign Duke Shelley. Point is, the cupboard is bare. You need corners. How many do you take in the draft?
Yeah, I think you have to take one. I think you take one early, too. The good news is, despite them likely drafting bottom of the 20s there, 28, 29, or what am I saying? 32nd, actually 31st, because Miami forfeited their first-round pick. This is a loaded cornerback class at the top. Keely Ringo, Georgia, Christian Gonzalez, Oregon, Joey Porter Jr. Remember that name? Joey Porter, longtime stud Steeler linebacker. His kid from Penn State. He's great. Cam Smith from South Carolina. Devon Witherspoon. Point is, there's 5, 6 solid cornerbacks that even though you're drafting this late in the first round, one of those guys should be available and you can at least start to stockpile some of these young guys. Now, I'm just not sure how much we can bank on Andrew Booth being that number 1 guy in 2023. And you brought up a great point about Patrick Peterson. I would hope, glass half full now, that Patrick Peterson at this point in his career, especially how well he's played here, he would like to finish his career here, maybe on a 1 or 2 year deal. Hopefully he doesn't shop around too much, but they really need him back. They need a veteran in this room in the worst way here, Sam, too. So I would say 1 at least, and I think it's going to be early, just given the tiers of cornerbacks that I've studied so far in this draft class.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. You just can't assume that that person steps in and contributes immediately. So you probably have to do a little bit of free agency, shopping, and draft. And we had another question related to that as well. Let me find it. What are the positions you'd like to see the Vikings target the most in the draft and free agency? Which players do you think might work as examples? I'll be honest, James. Question from James. Haven't done the full research. That's going to be a big project for after the year for me. I've looked loosely at some of the big names, particularly at corner. It is ripe with 29, 30, 31-year-old veterans, guys that might take a short-term, smaller deal, kind of like a Patrick Peterson, like an Anthony Brown from Dallas I looked into. I think that there are options out there for like a stopgap at corner while some of your young guys develop a little bit more. Maybe a Caleb Evans is a week 1 starter. I don't know. But you're going to need help there, and it's going to have to be a mishmash. It's going to have to be some development, some FA, and some draft, I think, combination. But other than corner, Luke, where would you like to see the Vikings go in the draft, particularly early?
Yeah, I've always had the philosophy you build through the draft. If you're 1 or 2 pieces away, sure, go out, maybe spend a little bit of coin in free agency. Again, all pending on who gets re-signed and who's left out there in the free agency pool. I'm glad you did bring up cornerback because that was the first position that I as well, loosely kind of just doing a little bit of research here, saw a lot of solid names that could be had at a good value, I think. Marcus Peters, Bradley Roby, James Bradbury. Just quick side note too, all year we've seen the Philadelphia Eagles just thrive, and they look like they're going to be a powerhouse for a couple of years. They got a lot of free agents starting on defense right now. James Bradbury's been a great number 2 corner outside of Darius Slay. We'll see if they re-sign him. Robert Quinn and Brandon Graham, both free agents there as their edge rushers. And then defensive tackles, Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave, they can't re-sign all those guys. So at least 1, if not 2 of those big names, they'll likely hit the free agency pool. I look at wide receiver. I know a lot of early mock drafts, Sam, have the Vikings going wide receiver, a guy like Josh Downs, North Carolina, Zay Flowers, Boston College. Certainly wouldn't hurt by any means, but I'm looking at guys that, remember Rick Spielman always loved to grab guys coming off their rookie deal. So 26, maybe 27, and there's guys like DJ Chark, McCole Hardman, even Juju Smith-Schuster, a few other guys out there that I could see stepping into that number 3 mesh, number 4 with Thielen, KJ Osborne, just having another body, because I don't know about you. I'm just not super high right now from what we've seen on Jalen Reagor being that guy. And I know a lot of us assumed and kind of hoped, wishful thinking, that he would be in the future, 2023 and beyond, maybe that new number 3 wideout. I'm a little worried about that as we sit here today. So wide receiver, I feel like you could get a guy for a fairly modest price that could help you impact your roster and offense in a big way and allow you not to press the wide receiver position early in that draft with that first pick. Again, knowing that there's a long wait from that first pick all the way to your second and the third round.
Yeah, I'm big on wide receiver. I'm big on just bolstering your offense, especially it's kind of a catch-22 because your defense is bad. You want to make it better. But also, the only way to combat your terrible defense is to have a really good offense. So you want to make sure that that is as fortified as it can possibly be. And you need to do it through the draft because you're going to be paying Justin Jefferson so much money, Adam Thielen so much money, TJ Hawkinson gets more expensive. All of those factors, Kirk Cousins too, Brian O'Neill. I could go on and on. The offense costs a lot of money, so you need to find cheap ways to supplement that.
And I will say just real quick, too, there is a lot of young guys here on this roster that maybe haven't made a huge impact yet on the defensive side of the ball, that there is cause for some wishful thinking here. A Caleb Evans, he obviously, again, Andrew Booth Jr., Lewis Seen, Brian Asamoah. So I think there is a little bit of flexibility there in that first round to, again, you always want to stay BPA, a little cliche, but it's true, best player available. You don't want to press too much and just draft a guy for need. But the one position on the defensive side of the ball that I don't feel there is a lot of young talent is the defensive line. They still have to make a decision if they're even going to bring back Dalvin Tomlinson. Harrison Phillips is outstanding. He's kind of cornerstone piece there. But then what? Who's the third guy in this new 3-4 defense? James Lynch, maybe? Odamewo? Am I missing somebody that just jumps off the page and say, this is a guy we can maybe build around and lean on?
All right, we gave Luke Inman his draft fix for the day. A lot more draft talk coming throughout the winter and spring with Luke as we hit it hard after the Vikings season. Before we answer the question, are the Vikings going to throw more quick passes? I'm going to tell you about Built Bar. Hopefully you got some Built Bars in your stocking this year so that you can go into your New Year's resolutions eating healthy. But that doesn't mean it's not tasty. It's still delicious because with Built, healthy is actually tasty. 100% real chocolate. Unbelievable new flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond. They're good and good for you. 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. And they're very accessible. Of course, you can get them at Built.com. You can also go to your local Sam's Club or Walmart. Go to Walmart, get the 4-pack box. Go to Sam's Club, get the 13-bar box with some of those new hit flavors like brownie batter and churro. Thank me later. Check out Built Bar. It's perfect for your New Year's resolution. Got some more questions, Luke, coming in hot here. This one is from Grill_Andrew1. Do you see the Vikings potentially incorporating more quick passes to counter the banged up O-line? I think the answer should be yes, but I also will say this to Grill. It's not as if the passes haven't been that quick before. The Vikings are 23rd in intended air yards. So they're throwing a lot of short passes. Now, I know short doesn't always mean quick. They're throwing a lot of short passes. Kirk Cousins is 12th in fastest time to throw. So that would, again, insinuate some quicker throws. Let me tell you the one place, Luke, where this team needs to be better. 3rd or 4th and short. So that's 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, or 4th and short as well. They have thrown the most passes in the league in those situations.
Wow.
61 times they have thrown. So not really trusting their short yardage run game at all. But they're not doing well when they throw in those situations, Luke. They have been sacked 6 times. That's most in the league. And they only are 19th in first down rate. So they are below average in picking up first downs when they throw 3rd and 4th and short. That's a very specific situation. That's 61 times they've done that this year. But if you watch the Packers game, it was notable. Or I think even in the Giants game too. Couple situations where they've got a 3rd and short, you're saying, give it to Ham. Give it to Dalvin.
Yes.
And they run kind of a long developing route down the field, incomplete. There's a miscommunication. The coverage is
jet
too tight.
Sweep to CJ Ham on 4th and 1. What are we doing?
Getting a little too greedy.
Too cute.
Yeah. So I think that's an area where they do need to adapt to those shorter throws. And with the banged up offensive line, as Grill pointed out, becomes all the more important.
Tell me what you think. I don't mind the aggressiveness to pass and try to catch the defense off guards on their heels a little bit, expecting run. It's just a lack of execution, right? I mean, easy to pick on what we saw most recently last week, Green Bay. Everybody was slipping and sliding. I just think it's more about the execution than the play call itself. Now, at a certain point, when you continue to fail on these 3rd and short, 4th and short scenarios, it's going to be easy to pick apart in hindsight and say, you're getting too cute, you need to run the ball. But remember, they really haven't been that effective on 3rd and short and running the ball in those situations and scenarios as well. Green Bay, again, after the block punt, they try to run with Dalvin once or twice and just absolutely stonewall, not even back to the line, a tackle for loss. And we've seen that multiple times throughout the year. So can't really blame KOC drawing up these plays because he doesn't have much confidence in the short running game. I don't have a problem with it. It's just a lack of execution. And that just seems to go all the way back to the beginning of the year. They haven't really played a complete game. And I know you want to kind of touch on that from top to bottom. Offense, defense, special teams, all 3 phases inside each unit. Sometimes on the offense, they run the ball, they can't pass. They can pass block, but they can't complete the passes downfield. Defensively, they're stopping the run one day, but they're giving up a lot of plays in the passing game. So it's been a hard time, and I know it's been frustrating for a lot of fans to watch, the lack of consistency from all 3 phases, kind of circling back to the 3rd and short, 4th and short scenarios. I personally don't have a big problem with the passing plays. It's just a lack of execution.
Hurts to not have a super healthy Thielen. I think Thielen is typically so good in those situations.
Yeah.
I know he's not healthy. Okay. I know he's battling through knee stuff. And that's been problematic, I think. Although KJ Osborne is there too, and they've been using him more and more. I think that's the person maybe you look to in those short yardage situations. Because you brought it up, Luke, playing a complete game, I got to wondering, what is the Vikings' most complete game this year? Is it week 1?
Let's pull this up here.
Defensively, I think it's the obvious answer. Offensively, fast start, sputtered toward the end, but they were also playing with a big lead. Well, I don't know if you can top it, honestly.
Complete game, and you bring up a great point. I think I as well would default, and a lot of people would, to that week 1. But when you say complete game, you got to think about all 3 phases. And I think about that Patriots game where the special teams picked up a lot of slack there as well. Kickoff return, Greg Joseph was solid that day as well. And you got a little bit out of all three phases. Now, certainly you can point to the defense gave up 26 points, but it was still one of those performances like we've seen a lot this year where they did show up when it mattered the most. And again, I don't know if that special teams outweighs that to call that one a complete game there as well. But I'm looking at all three phases there for sure. So I need a game where you got some special teams as well. But certainly offensively and defensively only, I would say that Packers game had down.
Which is a little concerning because that was the game that was supposed to be the launching point.
Right.
That game and every game thereafter, Kevin O'Connell stands up and says, yeah, it's always good to make corrections after a win. There's a lot we can improve on. We're still looking for the 4-quarter game. We haven't really gotten it. And it's kind of the best that we've seen, to be honest.
Yeah, you certainly want to be playing your best football here at the end. You see teams like the Packers and even the Lions and some other teams getting hot here at the end. Just haven't seen that consistency at all. So, yeah, a little cause for concern for sure.
Two more kind of meaty ones and then one fun one to close. I'm going to say this with an absolutely straight face, Luke, because I'm an adult. This question from Professor Poop. Next season has the potential to be pretty poopy. Of course, he says poopy with no cap space.
What is that, French?
Poop. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think something like that. 4 draft picks, which is I think a little lower than you laid out, but it's a low number. A rough schedule. Mahomes, Herbert, Burrow. They play Burrow, and an extra away game, which is true. Should the Vikings continue to be competitive to competitively rebuild or ponder the potential for genuinely rebuilding? Professor Poop, let me tell you, if you've got a Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook core, and one of those players might be gone, cap casualty, but the point stands. Toss in O'Neal and Darrisaw with that. If that's your offensive core, you're not rebuilding. Like, you're always going to be on the competitive side of that rebuild, because your defense can be terrible, and that offense is still going to keep you in a lot of games. And I think that if that's your group on offense, as long as that's the case, you're trying to be competitive. You're not ever going to intentionally blow the thing up. And that's why they're going to probably be right up against the cap again, because they're going to try, I think, to retain as many of these high-priced players is possible. I don't think they all survive, but I think they try to retain many of them, at least for next year. Luke, your thoughts?
I think, when they sit down and have this offseason conversation, if they say, hey, we're only 1 or 2 pieces away, if they put a lot of emphasis on it was because the struggles and inconsistencies, the lack of complete games was because of the new system, top to bottom, offensively, defensively, and special teams. After another full offseason now and a year under a lot of these guys' belts, that's going to go a long ways and start to show some more signs of consistency and reaching another level as far as, offensive scheme and defensive design, sub packages that we thought we'd all see by now, getting some guys back like Lewisine and Andrew Booth and guys like that. Problem is, when you look at this cap, there's only so much you can do, right? And you also have to keep in mind what you brought up. Does a guy like Patrick Peterson want to stay here? Does Dalvin Tomlinson want to stay here? So if you're continuing to go 1 step forward but 2 steps back, now it's really tough to look in the mirror as your Kwesi or KOC and say, yeah, we are still only a piece or 2 away. How can you say that when we just lost 3 core guys? That's going to be a tough conversation to have. I'm with you, though, at the end of the day, if they can retain 90% of those core guys, they can have a good draft, maybe bring in 1 solid free agent, both on the offensive, defensive side of the ball. But I will say, Sam, and we're going to have this conversation a lot over the next few months, devil's advocate, the Lions and the Bears, what they've done the last year or two, what they're in position to do now in this draft. You got to think about the Bears have the 2nd overall pick. That is worth a king's ransom. They don't need a quarterback. This is a quarterback loaded draft. Look what Bryce Young and CJ Stroud just did. Not to mention Will Levis from Kentucky is going to get a lot of hype as well. There's going to be teams banging on the door, kicking their door down, saying, take my money, take all these draft picks, and you can move down 5, 6, 7 spots and still get a blue chip kind of player. What the Lions have done, and under Dan Campbell and they have 2 first-round picks, Sam. They got 5 picks in the top 75 in a young core. Vikings core is pretty old, all things considering. Yeah. Lions got a young core. Devil's advocate says maybe now is the time to strip things down and take your time and build around your core young pieces. Who's the Vikings' young core pieces right now? Justin Jefferson and Christian Darrisaw. Am I missing anybody? TJ Hawkinson, I guess, is 26. Who am I missing? Young core guys for the future. Because otherwise, it's Super Bowl or bust in the next year or two max.
I think you're right about that. And I think, and that's part of the reason why you don't want to go full rebuild, is because you don't really have the pieces to do it. Like if you stripped it down to the studs, I don't think you have the young players to be remotely competitive at all. Because they're all unknowns on defense. Seen, injured, Booth, injured, Dantzler, got passed by Duke Shelley, and you mentioned that the lack of depth on the defensive line, that's all a big concern. So I think that if you want to enjoy rooting for this football team, you just expect it to get really bad in 2025 and just let them go all in the next couple of years. I think that's the route they have to go. We'll see how they approach it this offseason. One more good one here from Ingram. One more good one from Ingram's left foot. And Luke, you'll have to tell me if this is a movie reference because it's been well documented on this channel. I don't see many movies.
You don't get out much.
I don't get out much. Yeah, I don't leave my basement. So his question, who took the monkey paw out of the ominously glowing locked chest? Is that like Indiana Jones or something? We wanted to see Chris Reed. Is everyone happy now? Based on last week's disaster, only should he have been playing over Ingram? Yeah, okay. So we wanted to see Chris Reed. Is everyone happy now after his disastrous time at center? Based on last week's disaster only, should he have been playing over Ingram? Yeah, so people were adamant that Ingram is struggling. Where's Chris Reed? Why can't they put Chris Reed in? And now, Ingram's left foot is, which is a hilarious Twitter name, by the way. He's saying, well, should we really have been wanting Chris Reed to play at guard after seeing what happened at center?
Yeah, because, and I think this is slightly what that's in reference to, I didn't think Chris Reed, outside of the center exchange, which, you got to take a step back and be honest. NFL pass protection is so complicated, especially for younger guys too. But I thought his blocking just in general wasn't horrible by any means. Ingram has been so inconsistent, certainly see flashes. We saw some great ups and some splash plays week 3, week 4, week 5. Okay, can he just keep getting better and honing his craft, getting better at pass protection? Haven't seen it. Not a lot to be optimistic about, really. At this point in the year, I thought he'd be further along in just kind of honing his craft from just a pure offensive lineman awareness standpoint. Chris Reed didn't look horrible, in my opinion, just from a sheer blocking standpoint. The question is justified that maybe we would have been better off. Maybe it's too late, though, now, right? But maybe we would have been better off seeing a little bit more Chris Reed or some more competition there instead of just giving Ingram that job outright. Now, I think the big thing this circles back to, obviously, Brian O'Neill, the Vikings offensive line, their bread and butter was their bookend tackles. And the fact that you could leave them out on an island, and that allowed those 3 interior offensive linemen to double team and help each other out so much more. You're not going to be able to do that anymore with Brian O'Neill out. You're going to need to double team and help Oliudo if that's the case. Quick side note, just a bummer that Blake Brandel's still on that 4-week IR, and hopefully he'll be back. If they can win one game in the playoffs, he'll be back in that divisional round. But such a bummer to see all the dominoes fall the way they have. But TJ Hawkinson, you're going to have to leave him in line to chip block and help out Oliudo now. Another quick side note, second one, Irv Smith, is he going to be coming back? Maybe we'll see more 2 tight end sets there, and you can, let and allow TJ Hawkinson to stay in line and help block a little bit more and have Irv Smith as more of your passing threat. But circling back, Sam, I don't know. I think Chris Reed deserved a little bit more chance and shot, especially after what we saw last week.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm actually going to forgive Chris Reed for some of the terribleness last week. That was his first time at center, Luke.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
Ever. First time. And I'm sure he's practiced it, but he's never done that in an NFL game. He's been a swing guard most of his career, a little bit of tackle, no center. So first time coming in cold in Lambeau in the cold. Yeah.
Impossible.
That's a really tough situation to be in.
Yeah. And now what's your gut saying? You're around TCO a little bit more. Mance, the 30-year-old, they just signed 8 years in the NFL, 22 career starts at center. Granted, it was a while ago. He's drafted in 2015 out of Toledo. I think he just got cut by the Browns 2 weeks ago. So he's been in the league here a little bit. Hasn't started a game, especially at center, in a while. Just gut knee-jerk reaction saying about this center position next week and beyond.
My gut says that Chris Reed starts against Chicago.
Okay.
And if he holds his own, he's the guy in the playoffs. If it's more of the same, I don't think they would hesitate to go to Mans, who, if you look back in his career, the one season that he got 1,000 snaps, so he was a full-time starter for a whole year, he was one of the best centers in the NFL. Now, this is going back
2016.
Back to 2016. Yep. 2016, great year. From that point on, he's kind of been a swing man. So I'm not sure that either option is perfect. I think the best case scenario, Luke, is that Garrett Bradbury just gets better. Garrett Bradbury could still come back from this, and they haven't confirmed that yet. It sounds like that back, and you can attest to back injuries from shoveling your driveway, Luke. It can be a little touchy, right? It's kind of hard to know how it's going to react once you start taking hits. So I think you cross your fingers for Garrett Bradbury, and then you see how Week 18 goes. Maybe you even give them each a half, and just get Greg Mann some snaps in there in what I think should be kind of an experimental kind of game where you're not trying that hard to win.
Because the worst case scenario would be that Reed struggles, and then you're rolling with Mans going into the first playoff game. There's no chemistry or timing with the checks and the audibles, the slide protection, all the nuances, and that's when you're rolling with him. Your playoff game, his first start's going to be a playoff game. That's a tough situation and scenario there as well. So, yeah, you're right. It's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out this week and beyond.
All right, we end with a fun one from Joshua Brook. If they were on the Vikings, which Luke would win if Braun was a tackle and Inman was a defensive end? And further, which QB is Braun protecting, Hassan or Ekstrom?
Wow. Getting in the weeds here. Okay, well, I got the versatility to line up anywhere. If you want me at edge, I can do that, but I am a Swiss Army knife. Braun, sneaky, pretty good snatch and grab there. If he gets his hands on me in the chest, I'm a little worried. Who's he protecting, though? I'll let you answer that one.
I think if I were building a team looking at Arif or me, I think Arif kind of has that elusivity, right? He's going to be a little bit like Russell Wilson type, kind of mobile, kind of short and shifty. Who do you think is going to diagnose a blitz better, though? Arif Hassan or me? Definitely Arif Hassan.
You don't want me to answer that. Yeah, you already know.
It's definitely Arif Hassan.
For sure.
You don't want me back there trying to figure out pre-snap how to set my protections so the safety doesn't rip my head off.
No, they'll be you guys will be running the Wildcat by middle of the first quarter.
Braun's
You'll be a great coach, though. You'll be a great coach.
Braun's got a good pad level. I think Braun would protect me from you. At least
right,
I don't know if this is front side or like blind side,
right.
But I think that side I'm good. You're not going to touch me.
All right.
Keep
sleeping.
They're chipping.
Keep sleeping, Sam. Just wait till I come off this injury report, all right? Keep sleeping.
Hey, we're going to do this mailbag every week now. The Wednesday mailbags in the Minnesota Football Party featuring Luke Inman and myself. We got the whole crew back tomorrow. Arif Hassan, Luke Braun join us on the full roundtable Minnesota Football Party. Ron Johnson pops in as well. Should be the full 5-man crew on the party. For Luke, for myself, check us out on wherever you get your podcasts. Just subscribe on YouTube as well. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you tomorrow.